What's been the biggest reward for you in the holistic field, or what's been your greatest challenge? So what's come back to you?
I'd have to say one of my, not necessarily greatest, but I'm going to say my most humbling or most prized memory of being a holistic practitioner, or even a more so the Universal Shaman aspect, was the ability to help a beautiful, treasured lady pass on. You know what I mean? It was a very as a practitioner, a shaman, as a person that helps people on their rites of passage. I had the lovely pleasure of working with a family and working with one of their elders to pass on, and to make that journey so much more peaceful and user friendly, and while yes, still hard and emotional for the family, also one of celebration and honoring of that beautiful soul. So that is probably one of my highlights of my journey, because it's not something that, one, you go out looking for, and two, it's not one that you sort of have the opportunity to do openly with the family there, and but then also observing and playing a role in the releasing of that soul from its mortal confines to then traversing the Rainbow Bridge. I mean, it's so for me, that is probably one of my most treasured moments, even though it's not an easy moment to be in, because the it's still highly emotional, even for, as a practitioner. But it was the most honourable one that I've had, because of being able to support not only the family but the beautiful traversing soul as well. So it's sort of like a double edge. It's it's probably a challenging one as much as a
double-edged sword. You get both sides.
Yeah. So so that is and again, it's not a it's not a how would you say, it's not a request that you get given often, yet it's probably the most honoured one that you could have, which is helping someone go from A to B, especially with that, I guess because we fear death so much. You know what I mean? It's from a shamanistic point of view, I don't fear death. I don't. I've come to grips of that is part of a massive transformation. But as humans, we seem to struggle with the idea of death. So for me, that being able to help the family work through that in that moment, as much as helping that soul work through that incredibly scary and, I guess, part where they fear it the most, letting go, was probably one of my most and is one of my most prized memories of what I get to do. You know what I mean? So
because health has always been seen as kind of an empathic, obviously, industry, and it attracts a lot more females usually. You get a lot of nurses. Predominantly you have male doctors, I suppose, although probably a mix. I don't know what the statistics are these days.
Yeah.
Is it the same with holistic health? Is it very female dominated?
Yes, it is. And I think because of that fact of the reclamation of the nurturing side of society, women are suddenly, I mean, traditionally women were the healers, they were the elders, they were the storytellers, they were the, the glue. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were the glue to the family. You look at a lot of Indigenous culture, and it's not grandfather that is the wise one. It's grandmother.
Yeah.
And so you look at a lot of that belief, and suddenly that's coming back into civilization or Western civilization to be and is being reborn or rehashed or resurfacing. So yes, there is some amazing male healers out there, and that's the thing. There is some amazing men doing some amazing work with connecting back to the unification of the masculine and feminine, and they're doing some amazing work. But at the moment, it does seem to be more predominantly feminine in its approach. I think for that fact that we have entered into more of a feminine energy consciously. But I do believe that yes, we are in. There is going to be a lot more of a balancing between the male and female, as once the males lose the fear of loss of power, but then also the females lose the fear of domination. You know what I mean? Like that's from my point of view, there has to be a unification of male and female, because we can't exist without the other. Doesn't matter how you look at it, we can't exist without the other. We need both. And when you look at from a shamanistic point of view, there is an element of male and an element of female in all cycles, in all facets. So to say that one is more stronger than the other, it's not. It's just that one tends to be more competent at leading at different times. You're not, if you're needing nurturing, you're not going to have a masculine warrior. You're going to need a firm but gentle mother. You know what I mean? Yet if you're defending a stand, even the old Nordic shield maidens put away their nurturing side and became fierce, warriors. So they invoked their masculine side. So same thing, I think with everything, there has to be a balance. Are we going to get that back? Yes, we are. Is it at the moment? We're still in that transitional process. So yes, at the moment there is still majority female, but I enjoy interacting and meeting with up and coming male healers and practitioners, because they do bring such a balancing effect to the consciousness as a whole.
Thoroughly agree. If what advice would you give somebody who is trying to break into the holistic field? Is there a course you might recommend, like a starter course? Or
the biggest thing is always start at the beginning. It's we all want to be the greatest and the best and the most influential person right now. Whenever I've it's really interesting. Whenever I teach any of my courses, whenever I run a class or anything like that, I always try and ensure that the foundations are there. Because it's all well and good saying, I know about chakras, but do you understand them? Do you understand what their purpose is? Do you understand how to work with them? Do you understand what their frequencies are? It's not just the case of, well, I know that base chakra is red. You know what I mean? It's you've got to have a, I think fundamentals or foundations of study is important. Going back to the simple aspects of what is energy, how do I ground my energy, how do I work with my energy. It's even the processes of clearing, clearing your space constantly, smudging, using sound, it's using the elements, be it fire, air, water, and earth. At the end of the day, everyone wants to jump to the top level. They don't actually want to do their foundations. Whereas I've found that when I've had students come to me and they've gone, I'm really struggling. I felt like I did this massive rush of learning, and now I've become stagnant. When you take it back to them, when I sort of go, okay, let's start back at the beginning. Let's go back to your foundational subjects. 9 times out of 10, they haven't learned it. They haven't implemented it as part of their studies, as part of their daily workings, as part of their daily or their own foundational self, which then means that they really struggle at then being able to build on something because they've got no basis to what they're learning or what they're trying to achieve. So for me,
it's kind of like the shaman versus the neo shaman, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, and this is a big one, especially where the word shaman gets thrown out so easily, and so like, I'm an urban shaman, or I'm an such and such a shaman, and it's and then when you say, okay, so have you been through this before, and it might be have you been through have you created ceremony? No. Oh, okay. Do you regularly commune in the spirit world? No. Okay, so it's, and I understand that everyone does things differently, but there's such a, unfortunately, like with most things, it gets created as a fad. And I mean, it then becomes really scary because these people are offering or saying this is what they are, but they actually have no understanding of exactly what that entails. It's so yeah, and it does, and it's that neo shaman versus an authentic, someone that's been through the trials and tribulations, and and that's where I say to people, you can't become shaman overnight. You can't just go and do a diploma of shamanic studies and then say, oh yes, I'm a shaman today, because it's so much more than that. And if it's a proper, if it's a say for example, and a knowledge-based course, one of the first things they should tell you is this course will not make you a shaman in any way, shape, or form. This is only giving you some background knowledge of being a shaman. You need to find your own path. And I mean, like I said, it took me, a good 15 odd years to even get, to even sort of be comfortable with the idea of okay, I think I might be almost ready to use the word shaman. You know what I mean? It's and it was only
exactly what you mean. I've interviewed too many neos over the years, and my background is my grandmother was Maltese, and my grandfather was a British naval officer, and he was posted to Malta during World War II, and they married, and he brought her back to London to live. And what he didn't realise at the time was she was actually a witch. And she her family used to create all the potions for the village in Malta. So basically, and so in London, she'd set up this shop, and she didn't have a cauldron, but she had pretty much something that looked like a cauldron. And she used to babysit me most nights before, while my parents worked and that. And I'd be sitting in the kitchen while she did this social stuff, and all the people who lived near her, they used to avoid the doctor and come to her instead. And
Yeah.
she'd creating, and she'd be diagnosing at the kitchen table. It was just bizarre stuff. And it wasn't until later in life I realized, that this is how shamans and people like her, it was a community acceptance is one of the things. The community must accept you to become something that isn't just neo, but is the community must look to you for some type of wisdom or guidance or something. And also it's passed down to you from a mentor or from family, or
Exactly.
and I think a lot of shamans, the people that claim to be shaman, don't understand that it is a community accepted role. And as you said before, it doesn't have to be passed down through family, but you must have some type of mentor to pass that knowledge to you in some
Yeah.
way, and I think it's they miss it. They miss the core thing which makes a person an original, or that birthright in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And I think the hardest, I think what makes it so thing now, like so pertinent now, is the fact that people are like, oh, but I want a name, I want a label, I want a blah. And I know for me, that's one reason I've struggled so long to actually put a label on myself of being a shaman, because one, it does convey for some people a real
Reverence.
fear. Yeah, real fear. And then other times it's more the case where they're so enthralled by it that they're just caught up in the fact that, oh my god, you're a shaman. And it's like, I'm human. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't levitate that I know of yet. Leave it with me. So it is
Yeah.
that thing of, it can be such a way of either bringing people together or scaring them off. But people want that label. They want that mysticism. They want that, I am something super special. The only problem is it's a lifestyle. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are, they say to me, like, oh, it must be so exciting being a shaman. And it's like, no, it's kind of normal.
Kind of boring.
Uh, I live in a house. I still go, I still have a place that I go to work every day. And yes, I get to do what I do in that place of work, but I'm nothing. It's nothing like, out of a, I think the worst thing is they expect me to be walking around in the grass skirt half the time, and things like that. Whereas, yes, okay, I do regular ritual and ceremony, and I still work very highly with herbs and, making concoctions and all that sort of stuff. And, and then that's without even then doing the healing side of stuff and the other work that I do, and some of the deeper, darker work that I have to do as part of what I am. So, but it's not like, I think the worst thing is, yeah, a lot of people get a grandiose idea of, oh, I'm a shaman and da da da, and it's not. It's actually quite like anything else. You know what I mean? It's a position that I take very, very seriously, and and it's not it's my life purpose, not a career, not a job, not a label. This is my life's purpose, and which means for
It's a
me it's more
calling.
than
It's a calling, and
absolutely.
and the only that's how I see it too. I mean, I see it a lot with priests and nuns. I grew up Catholic,
Yeah,
basically, so and a lot of the nuns that I had contact with, they were called to do what they did through
yeah,
angelic message,
yeah,
and then I've also seen it in like with my own, like my grandmother's side of the family. When we went to, we lived in Malta for 6 months, and I saw some pretty wild things while I was over there.
Yeah.
And that's because people in my family were called. Not everybody was called to do that. What she
No.
did.
No.
In fact, it usually skipped a generation. You know, every other generation. You know, somebody was kind of selected, or they showed some type of, oh, that looks interesting. We'll
Yeah.
see if that develops. You know. But the calling is part of the process. I mean, and like with you, you've always known it, and
Yeah.
that is a calling.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and like I've always had this connection to something a bit more alien,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and you know, and it's kind of like, okay, I what the thing that frustrates me is it's very prevalent in more in ufology paranormal circles. There
Yeah.
are a lot of researchers in these areas who have literally, after, if I've been having dinner with them and I've interviewed them at events and that, they will actually say to me they've never had a contact experience.
Mm.
And the first question I say back to them is, what are you doing in this field then? You haven't been called to it.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be. What the hell are you doing? And then I've had even some of the top ones in Australia basically say to me, oh, I don't believe in aliens, but they sell books on it. And I
Yeah.
just look at them like, and I just say, you are what's wrong with ufology.
Yeah. Exactly.
You
And that.
shouldn't be anywhere near this field, because you are the one that people look at and then say, then damn the rest of us with, or tar us with the same brush, because
Yeah.
you shouldn't be anywhere near ufology unless you have had an experience. You certainly should not be speaking at events or writing books on the subject.
Exactly. And
You
that's, and I think that's the problem, is that, you know, people, they, you know, again, it's, you know, as I said to, and I've said to people, if you understood what it means to be a shaman, you wouldn't want to do it. You would not
yeah.
want to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
There's a lot more, yeah. There's
exactly.
a lot of stigmatism involved in all of these areas where
Yeah,
you're.
and that's the thing. You know, like it's you know, anyone that says, "Oh, I've always wanted to be one," oh, it'd be so amazing. It's like, yeah, it's amazing, but it also scares the living. It scares the living daylights out of you at times. It makes you question everything about yourself, about life, about all that sort of stuff, because you need to. You need to remain objective. You need to remain, you know, in a space where you can do the work and do it for the highest good, not because, oh well, this gives me a great name or this makes me famous or whatever.
Mm,
You know, I
mm,
don't do what I do for me. I do it for humanity. I do it for those people that are interacting. And sometimes, yes, it's on a small scale of, you know, Mrs. Such and Such coming in and working with her, or doing it where, you know, I'm on going on holiday and next thing I'm having to stop the car, pull over, do a ceremony on the side of the road because, you know, suddenly I've been called to do ceremony to help shift something on the planet or blah 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 blah. So it's you know what I mean, like it's not, you know, I mean, thankfully I have a very accepting family that when I sort of say, right, pull the car over, I've got to do something, they're just like, okay, coffee time. You know, it's you know,
it's funny. It's funny you should say that. I did it. I do a few road trips. You know, I do spiritual road trips now and again. And the very first one I did, I had a lady who used to make drums and uh, dream catchers and things like that. And oh my God, seriously, every time we went past anything that had been hit by a car, she had to get out. And honestly, I don't know how many times we stopped on this road trip. It was about 3 or 4 times, yeah, a day,
yeah,
basically, for her to go and have a look at the roadkill to see if she could sell. Oh, God, I'll never forget that. I remember thinking, you know, whatever you do, go don't go with a shaman basically on a road trip. Because you know, add 2 days to the trip, because they'll be scavenging, you know,
yeah,
feathers
exactly.
or
Yeah,
claws,
and that's
or, you know.
and
God.
the thing is too, you know, like it's you know, like people you know, people like uh you know, oh well, you know, like um you know, yeah, it is that thing of, you know, like they go, oh, where do you get your feathers from? And I'm like, well, you know,
They
exactly
come.
that.
Yeah.
They come to me, and I find, I find a deceased animal, and I honor it, and harvest its feathers, and da. What? You, ew. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. Yeah, I
where
know.
did you expect
Like,
me
where
to
do you
get
think they
feathers
come
from?
from? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them selling eagle feathers at
Yeah.
Spotlight. Like,
Yeah.
and also it's so I mean I sort of giggled because it's like, and even then, like, it's like uh when you're doing stuff like that, and it's like that giving and receiving, and it's like, oh, hang on a second,
The
I've got to.
confirmation, it's a validation process too. When
Yeah,
I did my last spiritual one was New South Wales, Katoomba, and then back to Queensland, you
yeah,
know. And on that trip, I collected, oh my God, I think I had like 10 white feathers by the end of the trip. It was only a
wow,
19-dayer, but
yeah,
basically, that's how I used to communicate, because I didn't want to find anything dead and do anything to it, because I'm not into that sort of thing. So I would
yeah,
actually just say before the trip, I'd say, look, don't throw dead stuff at me. Just leave a feather if I'm on the right path.
yeah,
And then, sure enough, 10 feathers,
yeah,
one for every so often. I'd be looking. I thought feather would actually blow at me, or it would be on my path as I was walking.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I just set some rules on mine. I don't do any dead cadaver stuff.
And that's also the other thing is too, like, especially with a lot of like, new spiritual people, they're believing that they've just got to go with what goes, and like, I mean, I remember being woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and people going, like, entities and beings and all that sort of stuff coming in going, oh, you're awake. And it's like, well, no, actually I wasn't, I was sleeping. You need to
Mm,
bugger off. And people are like, oh, how could you ever say that to him? I said, because at the end of the day, this is a working relationship. Would
mm,
you like to be woken at 3 a.m. by your workmates? No. So you need to have those boundaries. You need to have those rules. So by you sitting there saying, right, I don't want to deal with dead bodies
yeah.
of poor, featherling, whatever. I would really love just that confirmation through feathers. Is
Mm.
basically you're putting a boundary on your relationship as well. That, okay, no, I don't need to see the death part. I just need to have, the gift, and that's a huge thing. For many spiritual workers, is it's like, oh, I never get any sleep, or I'm always seeing dead animals, and it's like, okay, so stipulate, what do you want? How do you want this to roll? What is your working environment to look like? As much as you sit there and say, right, I'd really like my office to have a desk and a chair and this and that. I don't want to see dead bodies. I don't want to have to deal with dead animals, or dead humans, or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? So yeah, it does. Yeah.
I
Uh,
had that same road trip. I took another lady who was very early in her. She was quite older, but it took her a few years to get to where she should have been in her 20s,
yeah.
about 40 years actually. And so that's why I invited her on the trip, because I kind of got told to bring her
Yeah.
along, see how things go. And the very first night we're at, is it Mount Warren? Oh, I've forgotten the name of the mountain. It's just in top of New South Wales, beautiful place.
Yeah.
And we're staying overnight at a place, and I found a feather on the bed. It was weird. I had unpacked. I'd gone outside to pick something out from the car. By the time I got back to my room, there was a white feather on the bed.
Yeah.
No,
Cool.
so I knew I was supposed to be there. Anyway,
Yeah.
that night, I woke up about 3 a.m. witching hour,
Yeah.
and there's a full-on combo, like bloody party going on next door in her room, and I'm listening. I'm thinking, oh, what is she doing? And I'm thinking, oh, she's communing or something. So I'm listening, and I'm actually quite enjoying just listening. And then I thought, oh, I better go to sleep or I'm not going to be any good to drive tomorrow. You know, we're only driving about 3 hours a day. We're doing a very slow trip. But it was, anyway, the next morning I'm chatting to her and she's telling me about this wonderful dream she was having. And I'm thinking, yeah, you didn't have a dream. They were actually in your room, you know, because I was hearing it, you know. And we started talking and I started telling her some of the things that were in a dream because I've been listening to it. And she was there going, do you mean they were actually in the room with me? I went, oh, yeah. I think there was, because I thought there was about 2 entities in there with her.
Yeah.
Basically, I got to the point where I actually they'd said, oh, do you want to come and join us? And I just kind of went, you know, I said, oh, I'm too tired. I've got to sleep. Or I'm going to be shit tomorrow. I was the main driver on that stint. So I said, no, you enjoy Barb, you know, enjoy her. We'll chat down but it was near a really fabulous mountain range, and they were the entities that lived on the mountain and that. And so they'd come down to check out the, you know, what was going on.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting. So, and since then she's really developed into a channeler and a medium. So she's fantastic.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. And I think that's the thing, is sometimes it is like little you know, journeys like that do help. And also, you know, even just giving her the, you know, the feedback and stuff, you know, sometimes is enough for the confidence to grow, knowing that, oh, okay, yes, I am. It's not just me getting this; it's someone else getting it as well, and you know, that helps to open and, you know, foster that growth in others too. So yeah, that's cool.
We got a lot of great footage too, and lots of wonderful supernatural photographs out of that trip. Just nice. Stunning stuff. I seem to have an affinity with vortexes. I can actually capture vortexes.
Oh,
and
wicked.
And she can capture orbs. And we've got one photo. We were standing next to each other. We both took the photo at the same time, and I have this beautiful vortex, swirling vortex. Wow. And she has the most amazing orbs. Same moment we took the photo.
Yeah, right. That is cool.
That is cool. And so when people ask me about that sort of thing, I just say the reason not everybody sees is because you have to have an affinity to whatever you're looking at as well, you know, and have had something open to you. I don't think everything's visible to everybody. Obviously, I couldn't see her orbs, but then she couldn't see my vortex. So
exactly, and I think that's the thing too. Is it's realizing that even like, you know, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that it's not one of your strengths. That's what it comes down to, you know. And I think that's the thing with a lot of people, is that they are trying to constantly, you know, do everything that everyone else does. That's, you know, doing it at the time. You know what I mean? So rather than standing uniquely in their own and saying, well, okay, I don't do that, and that's okay, but this is what I do, you know. And I think once you understand that, then suddenly, you know, and especially with a lot of, when I've taught a lot, people have gone, oh, but I don't get it like they do. And it's like, because you're not meant to. You're not meant to get, you're not meant to be exactly the same, because the people you're going to work with, the people that are going to interact with you, are going to need you to be stronger at this, because that's what you're going to help them through with, you know what I mean? And whereas, you know, if we were all the same, it'd be bloody boring, and we'd be, you know, we'd only be progressing so far, because we'd only have so much of an understanding, or only a certain level of knowledge. Whereas that's why you do have copious ways of doing things, and skill levels, and even skill sets, because we all have, you know, a distinct or unique purpose of what we can, and what our strengths are, so that we can then help develop that part of humanity, and develop that part of humanity, and all that sort of stuff on a different level.
It's amazing. It's also how much you practice what you're doing as well. I mean, I found with astral projection, I interviewed a great guy up here called Greg Doyle. I don't know if you ever came across him.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I think, I have. Yeah, I've read some of these. Yeah.
And for about a month or so, I went and did his Thursday night class on astral projection. And at the end of the 3 weeks, and then I interviewed him for the magazine a few years back now. And after doing a progression of 3 or 4 nights, I had the most tactile, it's actually quite sexual.
Yeah.
This,
Normally is, yeah.
yeah. And I was right out there, and it was just like, oh my God, this is phenomenal. But you know what? I've never got back there because I stopped I did stop going to the classes. You know, I kind of had done it just for the magazine to learn about it.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you know, I've always thought, well, I probably should have, you know, done a bit more maintenance on that or kept it going. But it's like there's so much going on. There's so much to, you know, so it's also, I think, not only do you have an affinity, but it's also what you're drawn to, you know?
Exactly. And that's the other thing is too, it's like for a lot of people, they're trying to do everything, yet it's like, you know, as I say to people, when you're first starting, it's good to have that overview of looking at stuff. And that's where, like, for instance, when I do my Thursday night class, that's what it's all about, is just dipping people's toes enough into it to sort of go, oh, do you like this? Does this interest you? If not, that's okay, because it might not be your thing.
Yeah.
What it is it's, you know, like, you know, it might be enough, as you said, like you did it enough to know about astral projection, to have an experience and go, wow, that was trippy and I absolutely loved it, etc., etc. Does it draw me? No, it doesn't. And that's okay. Like, it's there's no right or wrong with it. It's just, well, you've experienced that, you've given it a go and gone, wow, that was really cool, intense, cool. But that's not my thing. That's not my, you know, because if it
Yeah.
was, you would have,
I wasn't
probably would
quite
have kept
prepared for how sexual astral stuff is. It's
yeah.
not, I don't think a lot of people realize that.
No, because
They get
it's
a bit of a
also
shock.
well, especially where too, like when you look at it, like the your sexual energy, your you know, working from, when you look at any form of intimacy, it is incredibly personal and intimate and all that sort of stuff. When you astral project, I mean, you are not just, you are essentially experiencing energy and frequency and light and color and everything in its most energetic base. You know what I mean? And the thing is, it's all got to run through your base chakra. It's all got to run through that that you know, where we experience sexual energy. And the thing is, for many of us, that's not a place where we like to dwell. I mean, even though we enjoy it, we don't like to dwell there, because heaven forbid we're seen as perverted or something else. The only problem is, when you go into astral projection, you are relying purely on sensation, on like on that physical feeling, in the way of your energy field. You know, you've got emotions, you've got thoughts, you've got all. You basically just become your energetic self, which means it is so much easier and so much more uh, intimate that it does. It triggers a very sexual, sensual response in the body. It's not just because, I mean, you're merging with other energy fields. The only time we merge normally with other energy fields is when we're getting down and dirty. You know what I mean? Like, so when you think about it, like, you know, you might hug someone and it might trigger a sense of something. But when you're intimate with someone and you're actually really closely connecting with them, that's essentially a very similar feeling, especially if their connection is on all levels, be it physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. You find that the intensity of the connection is so much more. So when you're astral projecting and astral traveling, you're essentially, you know, finding yourself immersing your energy with other energy, and it is incredibly full on in the way of our sensory and our even our intimacy or experience, and that's
You
why
know,
for many people it is such a sexual response, or a sexual a highly sexual spirit experience with it, like it's
I did, I did ponder, AJ, if that was the crux of mental illness, the untethering.
yeah,
And because going through that whole process, I had the silver tether kind of thread linking me back to my physical body.
yeah,
And it made it kind of, when I was out there and I was kind of philosophizing, as you do
yeah.
before you have sex. But I remember thinking to myself, wow, if the tether is broken, is that why mental illness develops?
So,
Because
especially from a shamanic point of view, we do look at mental illness not as an illness of the mind, but an illness of the spirit. So, or a dysfunction in the spirit. So, and so it's when dealing with, say for instance, say for instance schizophrenia, it's not necessarily the person is, because I mean, when you talk to someone that's got schizophrenia, I mean, one, the thought, the voices are not nice. It's not like, oh, I'm young Mary May and I'm coming in, blah blah blah. Oh, did you know you look so beautiful today? It's not that. It's horrible. It's mean. It's nasty. It tells them all these, many a times tells them all these terrible things. Yes, occasionally you do get some that have a nice voice come in. But if we look at that from a shamanic point of view, you're looking at someone that is essentially like a radio. They are constantly picking up on other people, on other entity thought process, on other entity feelings, on other entity, and when you and that's why they know that it's not their voice. They know it's, that it's not a mind voice, because the voice has a totally different energy behind it. So when, from a shamanic point of view, when we're working with mental illness, or what society considers a mental illness, we're actually looking at, for instance, yes, dislocation of the soul tether, dislocation of dislocation of the soul itself, depending on, like, it's not just the they might be, the soul might be out there, and it's almost like they're still tethered, but they're not quite back in the body. They're separate from their being. Then you've got the dislocation of the actual tether, where it can be a lost soul as such, and that's where you have essentially something like a possession, or something like that, because you've got to do a soul retrieval or something like that. You then, I mean, you're looking at it from a point of view that, this is a car in which we're driving. Our body is a car. The driver's gotten out and the car's still in drive. You know what I mean? And it's still going, it's still doing.
Picking up hitchhikers.
Picking up hitchhikers. And that's the thing. So when so from a shamanic point of view, we look at mental illness as more of a something happening with the soul, rather than something happening just with the mind. The thing is, it projects through the mind, because it is connected to these upper chakras. It is connected to our governing vessel, which is our brain, the one that connects us to spirit and also into our physical world. So so when you're working from that point of view, and exactly that, it is, like, there's been many of a thought put out there that if we were able to teach, people to meditate. I mean, even, I know there's that thing going out. If we taught every kid to meditate, we would, we'd get rid of violence within a generation or so. It's because we are struggling with keeping this mind on a very, or keeping this mind in its vehicle sometimes. And I mean, you look at if we can teach people to meditate, teach people to connect their soul back to themselves, suddenly you would have a lot less people feeling unsure of themselves, have a lot less people feeling lost within themselves even, and for a lot of mental illness, you'd actually be like, there's I read somewhere about how they're doing with a lot of mental hospitals and stuff like that, rehab centers, this meditational thing of bringing them back and putting them back into themselves, bringing their awareness from out here into here, that then suddenly they're finding that their symptoms of mental illness are actually ceasing to exist or minimizing, because they are actually being settled back into themselves. They're actually, rather than being little portal jumpers and jumping all over the universe, they're now coming back in here.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly kind of as I was kind of visualizing it as a car. So
yeah.
So just for our listeners and readers, do you have a few quick tips on basic things we can all do to start living a more holistic life today?
Yeah.
What would you recommend? It can be in like menial stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like for many people, there is this massive perception that, in order to be spiritual, I've got to give up all my worldly possessions, and I've got to become, the epiphany of an angel, and blah 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 blah. And in actual fact, that's not the case. There are there's a few things that you can do. So first one, I find with most people, whenever they come to see me, they're feeling ungrounded. They're feeling like they haven't got a steady footing. They're feeling like they're really struggling with just understanding where they're at. And I tend to find that the first thing I teach them is, you know what, chuck your shoes off, grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea, a chai, whatever it is that you're currently drinking, even if it's a glass of wine, chuck your shoes off and just go and stand in the backyard barefoot.
And ground yourself.
And ground yourself out. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to invoke any, major blah blah blah. The biggest thing is actually just putting your feet back on the earth. We have over, I think it's I was trying to numbers. I think it's like 5,000 or something different nerve endings in the feet, and it could be different. But anyway, numbers are But anyway, so when you look at it, if by you simply just standing on the earth, you standing out there where there is a biofrequency, a magnetic frequency, all that sort of stuff pulsing around you. There's life. There's light. There's air. There's earth. There's water. All that sort of stuff. You simply standing out on that ground activates and grounds that system out naturally. It connects you back to the consciousness in which you exist, so the actual higher consciousness of humanity, but it also connects you back to your earth, which gives you solid footing. Most people, we wear shoes, we're wearing thongs, we're wearing slippers, we're wearing socks, we're wearing, we don't walk on the earth. We don't actually, how many people now do you see walking along the beach in either shoes or those weird feet sock things or the thongs, or because we're worried about, what might be on the beach, you know what I mean? Whereas, 30 years ago, I mean, none of us kids wore shoes. None of us did. We were too busy bloody running around. You get something stuck in your foot, you'd stop, you pull it out, and you keep going. Like it was just that sort of a mind frame. So grounding is one of my first things that I always say to people. When was the last time you got your bare feet out on the earth? When was the last time that you actually just had a chair and you sat and you put your feet on the ground? You watch people even camping. They still wear thongs. They still have mats down. They still have tarps. They're not actually walking on the earth. They're still walking insulated from the process. They go for a walk. They go for a swim in the ocean, and they've got their their little ocean shoes on or whatever. Then they're still inhibiting their connection. So grounding is the first one. that is a strong one that helps people to actually get back into rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is then, for instance, a good one is many people will complain that their house is busy, that their house is filled with stuff. Like it constantly feels like there's things rolling around in their heads, and they struggle to sleep, they struggle to sit down and have a fluent conversation with the rest of the family. And this comes down to the fact that energetically, houses aren't natural. They're not a natural substance. They've got wiring in them, they've got metal in them, they've got all these sort of different pieces. And again, we're insulated from the earth, so there's nothing to help anchor anything down. Smudging or cleansing the house is a good, and is something that, say, for example, I do weekly in my house. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of my regular, okay, right, clear the house, allow for this week to flow.
Mm-hmm.
This can be done in a variety of ways. One is using a smudge stick. So, going to your local little crystal or herbal shop or whatever and finding smudge sticks. And lighting the end of it and walking around the house and using that smoke to cleanse. It can be for some where they apply, or they, especially say, for instance, they have a religious connotation. So it might be a Catholic background or something. Obtaining, for example, holy water,
Mm-hmm.
and using that and spraying that around the house while you say, for instance, the Lord's Prayer or something like that. Can help to cleanse your space as well. So it's, and that's what I mean. It's not limited to just having a spiritual background. You can have a religious background. For instance, the use of frankincense and myrrh is very, very good, especially if you use it in a censer. You could do the same thing as they do in the big churches, which is, douse it around your house if you're not into, smudge sticks. Using the same thing. You can buy frankincense and myrrh resin and apply it to a charcoal in a censer and pass it around your house. Again, you could use a choice of a prayer, or you could use the Lord's Prayer or whatever it is that you are drawn or affirming with. You've then got things like singing bowls or bells or chimes or tinctures, where you go around and basically ring them all around the house using sound to shatter negative energy. But then also you could do the thing where you have using your elements. So salt water, because salt represents earth, water represents water. And then using incense, which has got the element of smoke, which is air, and then the ember, which is fire. So again, you could go around and do that. So cleansing the house is a huge one, because people don't realize how much their mental thoughts leave little piles of steaming thought processes around their house. And it slowly builds up and clogs like a hoarder's house, and you can't move. And therefore, every time you sit down, it's like, oh, there's that thought. Oh, yeah, that really upset me. Now I'm going to sit here for the next half an hour and stew about that thought, because I've had it rehashed in my brain. So that's the thing. So little things like that. So grounding is a big one. Smudging your house is a really good one. And then also, something, really simple is just, putting on groovy music. You know what I mean? Having it where you bolster your energy. Like, music is running on frequency, it runs on sound, it runs on mathematics or numbers. It's when you break music down, the more that you enjoy music, the lighter your being is. There's more chance of you getting up and having a bit of a groove. There's more chance of it bringing a smile to your face, which helps raise your energy. And even it does. And the funny thing is, it doesn't matter what sort of music. If you're into classical, music, or if you're into heavy rock, it doesn't matter, because each of it has an amazing frequency behind it, which is enough to lift those spirits. So sometimes that is like, those are three things where I normally start with people, because it's just There's something that they can really easily put into play without too much
disruption to their normal routine.
People aren't going to be sitting there going, "Oh, Jengies, that's a bit weird," or whatever. They're just playing music, or they've got incense going, or they've got they've smudged their house with a cleansing crystal spray, or utilizing essential oils to produce another shift in that house, and then also going out and grounding. Most people I know, once they realize, they go and get themselves a really nice chair, they stick it out in their yard, and they've got a little table where they can put their cup of tea and afternoon biscuits on or whatever, and they sit down, they create it as like a ritual of, well, I'm going to sit there and look at that tree now and just ponder my day and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be fantastical and
mystical.
Mystical. It's like really simplistic, yeah.